Every step towards your goals requires sacrifice, suffering, struggle, and tireless exertions of passionate action. Martin Luther King Jr. once said that human progress is neither automatic nor inevitable. The steps to becoming great are not giant leaps, but small steps of moving forward each moment. Life is a long road, so we stay focused, we stay hopeful, and we keep moving forward. There's a reason the windshield is so much larger than the rear-view mirror. The longer we keep looking back, we don't just miss what's ahead, but the road ahead can become more dangerous than the one behind. The most important thing we can do is respond to everything in life with a resolve to learn and be better than we were the moment before. We believe that progress is greater than perfection, that becoming is greater than being, and that we'll become greater by moving always forward.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to the podcast Always Forward. Good afternoon, Jameson.
Hey Phil.
Let's get this party started.
Cool.
So today we're talking about one of the 5 factors of health, which is training, which is probably people's favorite part. Or one that they love doing the most.
Yeah, I'd agree with that because it is the factor that, above all the others, feels like it's going to inch you closer and closer to that goal. Seeing results, getting closer to your goal of fitness or health or lean, muscle building, fat loss, whatever. Training feels like the thing that you're attacking it most directly with. To where, especially with sleep, and even certainly with eating at times, people really have to fight to convince themselves this matters, this makes a difference. Whereas when you are putting your body under stress and tension in the gym and actually feeling yourself work the muscles, you're like, okay, this is what's getting me there. So I do think that people are eager to talk about it. I think more so because most people that have listened to this podcast, probably for the most part, have tried the superset, 3 sets of 10, 4 rounds, whatever, and then hop on the elliptical or the treadmill for 30 minutes. And I think that those people are eager for a solution, something that actually helps you get and see real results in terms of fitness. And so, yeah, I'm excited to talk about it. It's fun. So,
yeah, we're not here just to get that pump.
No.
Get that pump.
Yeah, CrossFitters and functional fitness folks aren't maybe biceps aren't our first concern. They are there at times.
I mean,
you need a bicep for a pull-up. So, yeah. So we train the bicep, just not only the bicep. So
isolation.
Absolutely.
So let's kind of talk about, why we train, and then what we're training for. Because training is different to us, like you said.
Yeah.
To the bodybuilding world, to a lot of other, even sports-specific training is different.
Sure. Yeah.
We are training for health.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of let's go into that. What makes that different?
Yeah, so it's back to the continuum. The same continuum we use to gauge pretty much everything else. We've got sickness, wellness, fitness. And so whenever we look at a client or we look at an athlete or we look at somebody focusing on functional fitness or CrossFit, trying to approach this with the right mentality, we want to identify where they're at on the continuum. And so, because pretty much when it comes to training, it's all about intensity and volume. Maintaining intensity while also making sure you're hitting the right volume. And so if those words are confusing, we can kind of define those a little bit better in the future as we continue to talk about this. But we have to identify where you're at on the continuum to identify how you need to be training for the most part. And so we like to call what we do the way we program for our classes at the gym, for our CrossFit classes, and then even some of our other classes that we have, and even personal training clients. We would say that our primary concern is what we would call GPP, or what the CrossFit world would call GPP, which is general physical preparedness. That's how we train. We train with that in mind, is how can we make people generally physically prepared for things in life and have them look good and move well for a long time. Those are our goals, right? And so like you said, though, that shifts and changes a little bit when your goal changes. So GPP is not on the table for a football player that's on the O-line. It doesn't matter if you're GPP for that or if you're training for a sport-specific environment or sport-specific performance, then you are going to train what is necessitated in that position. Essentially, if you're a CrossFitter for sport, not just for health or wellness, but if you are by trade a CrossFit athlete, then GPP doesn't really have as much of a concern. At that point, you are training for performance. And so when we talk about training, we don't mean 4 hours a day in the gym under massive amounts of load with massive amounts of intensity and massive amounts of volume. We mean, how do you get the most out of general physical preparedness style and method of training? And so I don't know if that answers the question, but
yeah, no, it does. It's you like what you're saying is, this is what's going to make you healthy. GPP, the general physical preparedness, is what will make you healthy in life. It's what's going to help give you more time and help better age you. You're going to sacrifice, if you are doing stuff sport specific, you are sacrificing that health for a short-term gain.
Yeah, for sure. It's the thing.
Long-term.
Yeah, it's the thing that it does keep it varied. To focus on GPP keeps things varied because you're not training for a specific target of performance. And so if you were trying to come in to our gym to be a CrossFit athlete, we would evaluate your strengths and your weaknesses, and then we would do what many CrossFitters like to call make friends with your weaknesses and then beat them to death. And so a lot of your training and a lot of your practice would be focused on your weaknesses. So if you came in and you had phenomenal aerobic capacity and you were pretty sharp on your gymnastic skills and abilities, but you struggled to squat, decently heavy, or if your Olympic lifts were nowhere near the standard that you needed to meet, then we would go, okay, you have a strength deficiency and we need to focus on your strength deficiency. So your training is no longer focused on your wellness, it's focused on your weakness. And so for most people that come into the gym, their weakness is their wellness. And so that's our first target. And so that's really who we want to talk to today, is to provide insight on how do you train for wellness and understand that from training GPP style and methods for wellness, you look better, you feel better for longer, and so that's kind of the goal. And so on our continuum, you have sickness, wellness, and fitness. If you come in and you're sick, meaning obviously if you have some sort of chronic illness, then that's one thing, and that's not necessarily what we mean as much as manageable sickness, how we would define it in terms of obesity. And so if you came in significantly overweight, struggling with obesity, we would be focusing on volume. We would be focusing only volume. We're not super concerned about hitting massive targets of intensity or honing in on skills. If you came in and you were 45 pounds overweight and you were just riding a line of being struggling with hypertension, I don't really care if you can do a pull-up or not. We're going to focus on that target. And so we're just going to get you in here. We're going to get you moving. You're here to move at that point. So
let's kind of define volume then.
Okay.
Because we're talking about that now. Let's kind of define what is volume. So we'll start with that one first and then kind of work our way through.
Yeah, so volume would be, to explain it and not really define it, volume would just be the amount that you're doing. How much are you going to do in the gym today? With a specific workout, a very simple way to explain it would be a high volume workout would be 50 reps. A low volume workout would be 10 reps. And so the higher the volume, typically the lower the weight, the lower the load, as we would say, whereas the lower the volume, the higher the load. And so your intensity in terms of how you approach it is the same because one of the factors is changing. You typically do not see a high volume workout with a high load attached to it, especially when you're focused on just wellness and you're focused on our GPP functional health and wellness model. But at the same time, whenever you surpass that wellness point to that performance point, volume changes a little bit, and it goes away from how much are you doing in this single workout to how many workouts are you doing in a day. Volume in those terms gets away from how many reps are we doing in the hour long of class that we have and gets into what am I doing with my 3 hours of training today. So volume at that point surpasses reps and surpasses the prescribed workout for the day and gets into a more big picture of how much you're doing overall in a day. And so I guess that's how I would define volume. It's for the average person in here, it's how much are you doing in the class today. For the person that is trying to be competitive or for the athlete, your volume is how many workouts am I doing today, and am I splitting this into 2 sessions because it's too much to do in one, and that kind of stuff.
For sure. So that kind of takes care of the first person. So first person walks in, they're overweight.
Yeah.
They have a chronic illness of some sort.
Yeah, if you're even the kind of person that has been sedentary for a long time, let's say if looking at you like with being ignorant of what's going on your insides, with being ignorant of your ability to move well, and looking at you, you thought, you don't seem too unhealthy, but you know that you haven't really moved at all in the last couple of years, I would say you even fall into that. So obesity is not the only thing that puts you into that category. Being overweight is not the only thing there. That's not the classification of sick. That's not like, okay, you're sick because of this. Yeah,
different factors.
I think the way that I would identify that first person that's on that sickness level is like, how well can you move and how untrained are you? How long's it been since you trained in any capacity? If the answer is a long time, and if your movement quality is really poor, at that point, we want to help you approach training from that volume. Let's just get you moving. That's what we want to do with those people. So that's that first category of person.
Perfect. Yeah. So now let's kind of talk about the next category.
Yeah.
And this is kind of everybody that's been here for a while or has been training.
Yeah.
Before, kind of like talk about those. We're not going to prescribe the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to write that same prescription out.
Yeah.
That's just volume. Now we're kind of adding another piece to it.
Perfect example of that person is the guy or the girl who has been training for years at your standard Globo gym, your 24/7 fitness facility, and they've been hitting it as hard as they know how, and they are just ripping it on the elliptical and somehow can't seem to get out of breath, even still, or the person that's going, consistently and is really disciplined at the gym, and they're hitting their, hypertrophy supersets and all that kind of stuff, their isometric movements. It's that person that's going, I don't want to do this anymore. And so they come in here and they stumble in here the first day kind of skeptical, and they're not sure what they're going to expect. For that person, what we love to surprise them with isn't the intensity. It's okay, our volume is, here's the workout, here's what you're going to do in an hour, and you're at most going to do two elements today, being some metabolic conditioning and then maybe some accessory work. Or you're going to do some strength training, some weightlifting, and then some metabolic conditioning, and that's your volume. What we care about is that you approach it with intensity. And so the days of working out with your phone in your pocket and taking that 6-minute break in between sets, that's over. The days of staying in the gray zone in your heart rate and then upping it just to the green, meaning like 70% effort threshold, like those days are over. When you come in here, what we want from you is your weightlifting and your strength training, for the most part, to put you into like a heavy heart rate target. And then what we also want to do is whenever you come in here and you're hitting your metabolic conditioning, we want you to be in that 80 to 90% intensity rate in terms of where your heart rate's at. And so that is that person. It's either the CrossFitter that's been doing CrossFit for a long time but isn't necessarily aspiring to be a competitive athlete, or it's the person who can move relatively well, that's relatively strong, but we would say their fitness is lacking because they lack that intensity in their workouts. So person 1, volume over intensity. Just come in and get moving. Person 2, intensity over more volume. Train well before you train more. Yep. Train with intensity before you add more and more and more and more to your plate. And so, I would say that's our focus for type 2 person. That's what we want everyone in our classes to come in and do. How can we hit this with intensity? It does not mean you have to be scraped up off the floor after every single workout, but relative to you, how do you challenge yourself today? We've said it in our introductory podcast about the training element. It's like all the good stuff you want from fitness is on the other side of intensity. The lean body, the fat loss, the actual health, like that's all on the other side of approaching your workouts with intensity. So type 1, come in and move. Like that's it. And like we want to teach you how to move well. Type 2, hit it hard. Like do it well before you do more.
Yeah, and that's kind of the thing is those people that are hitting it harder have the movements down. Yeah. And that's I think that's kind of key for a lot of people. People always talk about people getting hurt.
Mm-hmm.
because they haven't built that base of how do you move,
right?
Doing the correct movement,
right?
Then we build intensity. We don't say, okay, I want you to do 50 thrusters for time.
Yeah.
Because what if that person isn't really good at the front rack position?
Right. Well, and I would say, too, the whole injury thing, I was just talking to one of the physical therapists that we have work out in here with us, and she and I were talking about how since she started here, she actually sees some patients out of our gym once a week. And so since she started here, we've been able to push a ton of our members to her. And it's not that CrossFit injures people. It's the fact that people who do CrossFit become so kinesthetically aware and become aware of their bodies, maybe for the first time ever, that they're going, oh, this hurts. How can I fix this so I can keep training? And so I like that type 1 person who comes in who is immobile and untrained and hasn't moved well and hasn't moved much for a long time or is maybe overweight. That person comes in, and that's why we're saying volume over intensity, because we don't want you to be stupid about how you approach it. But at the same time, that person may in the first couple of weeks discover muscular imbalances and discover issues with their bodies that they didn't know that they had because they weren't using their body. Yep. So I promise you, the first day you came into CrossFit, you did not injure both of your shoulders, both of your elbows, and both of your knees. You just moved for the first time in a really long time, and maybe you're recognizing the fact that, okay, like, this is what moving looks like, and I'm going to need to work my way into this, which is why we start with volume and good effort before we start with intensity, like you said, with those people. And then beyond that, we're huge like proponents of like physical therapy and prehab and body work and all of that, because of the fact that when you do CrossFit or you do a functional fitness method like this, your body needs help to manage that, and you want to figure out how to manage your symptoms and how to manage the fact that bodies age regardless, and that we are putting our bodies under stress regardless. And so it's not about the fact that you're getting all these injuries and you just need to go and get it like band-aided up so you can keep doing it. It's no, how do we keep moving well with the fact that the human body is imperfect? And so you get prehab and you get rehab so that you can keep moving, so you can keep staying healthy. But yeah, I would say like the whole injury thing is just like, no, it's not that you're getting injured. It's just the fact that you're using that muscle maybe for the first time. Yeah. So, yeah, I think, but yeah, we want to be careful about that by teaching people how to work their way into it. So, yeah.
For sure. I love this Pat Sherwood quote here. A lot of people had this on their gyms. I've seen this before. He says, the goal is to get fit, make it the best hour of your day.
Yeah.
Stay safe, turn up the music, high five some people.
Yeah.
And blow off some steam.
Yeah.
So remember that, relax, have fun, and work out.
Yeah, I think the most valuable one from that list is to make it the best hour of your day.
Yeah. When
you come in and you're focused on something besides general physical preparedness, whether you call it that or not, because our clients don't even know we call it that, honestly. But like whenever you come in and you're focused on performance, you're focused on competition, you're focused on trying to be a sport-specific athlete, like it's now work. You know, like sometimes training is the best hour of my day. Sometimes it's absolutely the worst hour of my day. And so it's because you put yourself under performance pressure, right? And so we want training, your factor of train, to be fun. Sometimes eating right and well, like eating not too much and eating plants is not fun, you know, for a lot of people. It's hard work. And so and it's also really hard work to be self-disciplined to sleep 8 hours a night, to make those sacrifices to get that in. I got to go to bed early, or maybe I can't get up earlier to go to the gym this morning or whatever because I'm going to force myself. That's not fun. Training can be fun. It's hard. It requires intensity, it requires hard work, it requires effort, and it requires days of you having to get peeled off the floor by somebody because you've hit it so hard and with such intensity, but it's fun. And so I think that's so valuable. It's how do you make training the best hour of your day? And that's that type 2 person, the person who is well and in between the wellness and the fitness. And then I guess just quickly touching on that third type of person, fitness, meaning you're all the way at the end of the continuum, you're as far away from sick as you could be, and you're here to perform. Then it's both. Then you train hard and you train a lot. You train multiple sessions a day. You train for 3 hours a day. You train weightlifting. You train skill work. You practice. You hit metabolic conditioning pieces. You work intervals. You do all kinds of stuff. And you do it all while maintaining intensity. You don't approach a single bit of it without massive amounts of focus and massive amounts of intensity. So if that doesn't sound fun for you, I wouldn't do that. I would come in, I would do a class and get your general physical preparedness, functional fitness in, hit it with intensity, and then go about your day, having had the best hour of your day. So
these people enjoy just watching themselves suffer.
Yeah.
But that's okay. Like
yeah,
people, but like not every time, right? It's like, we do this. We train sometimes 2 times a day, but for multiple sessions, and it's.
Yeah, but it's the ambition is there for more than just general health. Yes. I will not do that forever.
Correct.
There will be a time in life where I take, like we've said many times, you do the bird's eye view of your life. You take the 10,000 foot view of your life, and you go, trying to be competitive functional fitness athlete, trying to be a competitive CrossFitter, it's not on the cards anymore. So now I'm going to do this as a lifestyle, not as a sport. And so at some point, I will transition into that second type of person that comes in and just does the class with everybody else and hits it with my relative intensity, which at some point may be less than someone else in the class at that stage in life, and that's okay. And so there will be a time that transitions, but right now, I do what I'm doing, you do what you're doing. A lot of people that listen to this podcast are doing what they're doing, and they're doing their 2-a-days and their skill work and their strength work and all of that because there are ambitions towards competition and towards performance. And so there are also ways, I would say, too, to maintain ambition towards getting better at things while still staying in that second type of person. There are ways to not basically sell your soul to the sport of CrossFit while still moving forward and improving. So we do want people to understand that an element of training is getting better. That's the intensity piece. So to define intensity would mean that intensity is ever changing because as you're hitting intensity, you're growing and you're developing, and so your intensity then is going
before.
Yeah, for sure.
Sometimes even the day before.
Right. So to define intensity, if your workout is grace, 30 clean and jerks from the ground. If you don't know what a clean and jerk is, it's a barbell on the ground. You pick it up and then you put it over your head. It's 30 of those for time. And if doing it at its assigned weight of 135 pounds is out of the question, then you do it at 75 pounds the first time. And then when you do it again 3 months later, if you do it at 75 pounds that time, that's not great because it means we haven't improved upon that. And so we want you doing it at 95 pounds the next time within the same time frame.
Exactly.
So,
and that's the key thing, not at a slower time.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so that's the thing is it's trusting the process. So we're not saying that you have to train multiple times a day with tons of volume and tons of intensity to get better. Our people in our classes get better when they approach things with intensity, when they challenge themselves, when they get in their discomfort zones, and they approach training that way. And so we do want people to understand also you're getting better when you do this too. Because even if you don't aspire to go to a competition, you still want to be able to lift more a year from now than you lift now. You still want to be able to run a mile faster a year from now than you run now. GPP will get you there. General physical preparedness will get you there. Constantly improving at that point. So, yeah.
No, I think it's great. So you've kind of talked a little bit about that, and let's kind of deep into that a little bit more. What is the difference between training and practice? Right? Let's kind of define... I guess I really define. Let's kind of talk about when do I need to train, when do I need to practice, and why are they different?
Okay. We don't in our classes we don't practice a lot, and that's because, again, the purpose of our class is for you to have the best hour of your day and to have left having met all of your fitness needs.
Checking off all those boxes.
Yeah, and when you practice, you are. By the very nature of what practice actually is removing intensity from the equation. Now, it may feel intense if it's something you're really bad at and you're having to practice it.
Practicing handstand.
Yeah, it's true. So, it does feel like there's some intensity to it depending on the movement, but for the most part, our aim and our target is to take intensity out of the equation when we're practicing. So we don't practice a lot in our classes. A good example of practice would be coming in to start the day, if we're talking class format, coming in, and I think we have this next week even in one of our classes, but it's coming in to start the day and the coach providing some technical insight, some movement prep, some points of performance on the double under, which is, if you don't know what that is, it's jump rope, but the rope's got to go under you twice before in one jump. Really it does sound simple.
Wow.
The rope just needs to go under you 2 times. It's easy. So a good definition of practice for the double under would be the coach providing insight, the coach providing movement prep and standards and points of performance, and then saying, okay, guys, relative to how you need to practice this, I'm putting 8 minutes on the clock. Go. Practice. For some people, that may be just attempt double unders for 8 minutes. For some people, it may be find a cadence with your single unders. Do a better job at wrist activation. Let's look at your body form and your structure whenever you're jump roping. Let's focus on that. Let's practice that for 8 minutes. For some people, they may not even have a rope in their hand, and they may just be practicing the cadence and the timing of wrists and jump. For some people, practice may be working the hollow body position, because the jump rope and the double under requires good structural knowledge of the hollow body position. So for some people, when we're doing double under practice, that day is get on the bar and let's work our hollow body to arch positioning and stuff like that. So that is taking the intensity out, finding a relative method of practice for you where you're at with that movement, and throwing time on the clock and saying 8 minutes to practice, no intensity. Now, we don't do that a lot in our classes because you don't leave that day. You may have gotten better at double unders, but you don't necessarily leave a whole lot more fit at that point. And so we don't do that a lot with our classes because that's kind of a frustrating position to be in, right? And so you can get better at movements like that as you go, but for our class-based athlete, for the most people that will probably listen to this podcast, it's all about committing to the process and understanding that growth will come in those movements, that progress will come in those movements, and to trust the process in that. But what we're focused on first and foremost is burning fat, building lean muscle, helping you learn to move better. Now, for the competitive athlete, that changes so much, because if you got a lot of weaknesses that need a lot of practice, then you program that practice time in. Yep. You find a coach that will coach you on your weaknesses, and you practice. With barbell movements, that means an empty barbell or a PVC pipe. With gymnastics movements, it means most of the time structural things that you're trying to learn. If it's it's the same thing with us. If it's double unders, find what's wrong with your double under and you practice it, but you do it without the intensity.
So yeah, what do you mean by it without the intensity? Is like you don't practice double unders after you've already done class.
Yeah. A lot of people think that what's better to do is to basically practice everything under fatigue. And it's not. That's still training
there is
at that point.
Yeah. To do that kind of stuff.
Yeah, because okay, maybe not ever, but you are rarely going to have a CrossFit workout in a competition that just says, do a bunch of double unders. Like, it's always going to be under fatigue.
Yeah.
You're always going to be buying in or cashing out with double unders, or double unders are going to be that like annoying little thing you got to do after your couplet that is heavy and sucks. And so like it's always under fatigue. Yes. But until you can do them efficiently in practice, you're not going to just improve by doing it then. And so, yeah, you don't want to be practicing under constant and massive amounts of fatigue and stress on your body. It's how can you hone in? How can you get your mind on the activity that you're doing? How can you get your mind on the muscle, for lack of better terms, and really focus on what you are trying to accomplish right there? How can you remember the cues that your coach has taught you? How can you remember like the structure and the format and the bar path that's supposed to happen? How can you remember if you're practicing snatches, how to activate all the muscles you need to activate on your initial pull? How can you work the timing of your pull? It's so many things to remember, because if we were to coach a class-based athlete and evaluate them doing a power snatch, they probably could do a rep and we could give them 15 things immediately. Hey, just quick 15 things for you to change, and then rifle it off at them. they have no idea what to do,
They're
right?
like this.
Yeah, it's so from from a coaching perspective, that's just bad coaching.
It is.
But those 15 things that you get pointed out over time are the 15 things that you practice.
Yes.
And so that is how you spend that time.
Well, and I think the greatest analogy is okay, let's say you do class, you're dead. I'm now going to teach you geometry.
Yeah.
Do you really think you're going to sit there and learn anything that I teach you?
Yeah, definitely. And that's the thing. It's like people just think that it's the cliche saying that I hate is that perfect or practice makes perfect, but it doesn't. Perfect practice makes perfect. And so it's not it's again the whole nuance that everybody's well, change is good. No, it isn't. Good change is good. You know what I mean?
In the right direction.
Right. And so that's what we mean when we practice. Because if you're practicing bad structures and you're practicing bad form and you're practicing poor movement patterns, you're getting worse, not better. That's going to be more to relearn later. And so if you're doing that when you're tired and you're doing that under stress and fatigue, rather than, hey, today I'm going to practice not pulling early in my cleans and my snatches, practice that and do what you have to do to practice that and sincerely commit to it. That's annoying, right? I hate that. That's so that's why we don't do that in our classes, because it's sport specific at that point. Now we do want people to get better, but it's like any other sport. If you're playing soccer, or you're playing football, or you're playing baseball, or you're playing whatever you're playing, there are small nuances that require so much practice. The structure, I mean, golf is a great example. You are going to practice the movement patterns and the structure of your swing so many times. You're not just going to go out and play 18 holes over and over and over and over and over again, right? It's finding those nuances and it's hitting them with tons of amounts of intentionality and tons of amounts of focus, and that's not really fun. And so back to your point earlier, class is supposed to be the best hour of your day, so we want to make it fun. A lot of times, practicing a snatch pull is not tons of fun. So over and over again. So with training and practice are different things, and we want people to train more than they practice for the most part.
For sure. So we're going to stop, do a little hot take real quick.
Okay.
And we're actually going to do a different hot take than I was thinking of.
Okay.
Do you think in 2020 we will see the first female player?
I like it.
U.S. women's
Carly Lloyd.
Carly Lloyd, seriously considering, and she has gotten multiple offers to come work out for multiple teams.
I love it.
Do you think 2020 we will see the first female football player?
I don't know, man. Why not? I think it'd be awesome.
Yes. I think she would kill.
Yeah, from a roles perspective, she could kick just as well as anybody else.
Or better.
Yeah, absolutely. She's so good. With that said, if she gets hit, that will be. I don't want to watch that.
I don't want to be the guy.
There are so many rules and regulations in the NFL right now, anyways. Yeah. That
Roughing the kick. There's Griffin the kicker's got that.
Yeah, so I don't think that. I think the one thing that'll change is if it goes poorly, I don't think she's making any tackles. But that's okay. So if you kick well enough, you don't have to. So I think it'd be sweet. I hope so.
I think she ends cool.
up. I think it'd be awesome. Where does she go? You think? Who's made offers?
I was trying to look it up. I can't remember who made the offers. There were multiple organizations. Let me see if I can find it real quick.
I'm trying to remember where she played league soccer, and if she would just end up in that city, but I don't remember where that was.
Yeah, I don't remember. I was reading about it.
Who's the NFL team you root for?
Oh man, the Titans.
Okay, well let's hope she ends up at the Titans.
I don't think she will, but I don't think she's coming to Nashville, Tennessee.
Who knows, man? Nashville's getting a team, so yeah. So
cool. Well, let us know what you think.
Hot take. Women in the NFL.
There you go. # women in the NFL. So now let's kind of go on to training schedules.
Okay.
Now, for those of y'all that don't know, almost like the mandated, I feel like it was for a long time, CrossFit was 3 on, 1 off.
Yeah.
Every week. So it wasn't like, okay, this is a 7-day week, this is how many times you train. It was just, okay, you want to work out for 3 days, you rest 1 day.
Yeah.
Work out for 3 days, rest 1 day. And that's actually how CrossFit.com still does their programming.
Yeah.
Is based upon that model. Why they do that is because it is what they say the optimized work to rest ratio to keep that intensity.
Yeah.
And that volume.
Yeah.
So now let's kind of go over what's the difference between the 3 and 1 and the 5 and 2.
Man, I just think that I think it is very personal, and I think it's okay that it's flexible to the individual. But with that said, I just don't think there's any reason really to get away from the 3 and 1 like format if it works for your lifestyle.
Yeah.
Because of, like you said, for our type 2, our wellness focused athlete, our functional fitness training athlete, taking that day off after 3 days on is exactly what you need to be able to come in on day 5 on your next set of training days and hit it with intensity again. And so just realistically, if you go 5 days straight, you're going to have a really hard time maintaining that intensity.
That 4th, 5th day, you kind of get a little lethargic kind of.
Yeah, and I mean, if you had total personal programming, like maybe, but our classes are programmed for classes. For to try to meet the needs of 200 plus clients, not one specific person. And so while we have some lighter, more recovery focused days, some days that your load is not very heavy and we're not doing anything that's going to tax you quite as much as other days, like our programming doesn't lend itself in the direction of recovering for you. So you still have to be intentional about your own recovery. But I think if your schedule works on the 3-1, then that's great. If it doesn't, I think the 5-2 works. Again, at that point, I just think it's personal. For me, I hate taking 2 days off. Like, if I take 2 days off completely, then I feel like super sedentary. And it feels like taking 2 days off almost makes it harder to get back in to it after that second day off. And so the 1 day off is really good. If I'm going to do 2 days off, that second day is definitely going to be some sort of active recovery and not a full no movement rest day. But I think it is personal. But that 3-1 or the 5-2 serves its purpose in letting your body recover, which is the point. So
mine is kind of like 3-1-2-1. I'll go Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, take off Thursday, and usually do an active recovery day on Thursday, and then Friday, Saturday, and then take
Sunday off. Yeah.
And there's that option too. So like the 5-2 can kind of be even split up there too. So let's kind of talk about recovery. And let's talk about rest days.
Okay.
Now, there is a difference between rest days and recovery.
Yeah.
And so let's kind of talk about why we need rest days.
Okay.
And then we can kind of get in what's the difference between a rest day and a recovery day, because you said that you do a recovery day instead of a rest day on some of those days. Yeah, so
we can do this quickly too. Rest days would be just, exactly what they're called, letting your body rest. I mean, if you don't need to know all the science behind it to understand that when you train and when you work out, you are actually breaking your body down. Like, it is,
yourself
yeah.
apart.
I mean, all the haters of CrossFit and working out all together. Absolutely, you are tearing down your muscles. So, like, you're not hurting yourself, but this does tax your body because you have to break it down to build it up. And so, like, people are right whenever they say, like, well, that's not good for you. Well, it is good for you, but it is, causing things in your body to break down. It is putting your body under stress and tension. And so, that's kind of just the price to be paid of being human, is like, that's just part of this. Like, you're not a robot. Like, you have to experience that struggle of your body breaking down and your body being forced to need to recover. Your other option is to die early. So, like, deal with it. And so,
break down or die early.
Right, exactly. So, like, end up in the nursing home because you can't move on your own.
Exactly.
So, like, it's just part of the process. And so, but recovery is just as important as activity. And so if you train for 7 days straight, not only, like you said, do you have no intensity in your training anymore, but your body is actually just harming itself at that point. So for your body to improve, you have to accept the reality of your humanity and rest. So a rest day could mean do absolutely nothing. A lot of times rest days are associated with cheat days, and that's not the same thing. A cheat day is not like Taco Bell and like Mountain Dew on the couch all day long. But it is like, hey, today, the hour or hour and a half you were going to spend at the gym, you're going to do something else productive during that time.
What a great time to work on the think.
Yeah, sure.
Sleep. or eat or like another factor of health or like trying to learn something new.
Yeah, and you could just go, okay, this hour of my day is just going to stay empty to be filled by something else. And so you're resting, meaning like little to no like activity that requires any sort of intensity or like massive amounts of effort. So that's a rest day.
And I like what you said. It's not like it's a cheat day.
Yeah.
So I consume about 90 to 100 less grams of carbs.
On that day?
On like today. Like today I won't train at all.
Yeah.
And so like
for sure.
Like, you know, it's that way for a reason, right? Because I'm not, my body is not burning as many calories today as it normally would.
So does it, and I mean, carbs are kind of what fuels you in terms of your energy output. And so if that is less and you're at that point trying to fuel your performance with food, your performance is different that day. So you're going to pull back on that. And so, it makes sense. So that a rest day is nearly nothing at all. Now, there is a difference between rest and an active recovery day. Yeah. Active recovery day could mean you plan something in that spot that is a lot less intense.
So you kind of go back to that person number one.
Yeah.
Go back to the volume. It's not a high volume,
right?
But it's moving just to move.
How can you move today, essentially? So like a great example of like an active recovery workout for us would be come in and get on the rower for 40 minutes and go at a slow pace for 40 minutes on the rower, and every 5 minutes you're going to get off the rower and you're going to do some push-ups and some air squats. And so you're just moving. So that's like a workout active recovery. Other options for active recovery would be things like yoga, mobility focus, going for a walk, like doing hiking, stuff like that.
Walking your dog.
Yeah.
Taking your kids to the park.
Right.
Moving.
Yeah, moving. Just how can you move on an active recovery day? For sure. Yeah. So it's just how to fight that sedentary mentality by doing something else while at the same time you are letting your body recover. So that's kind of your rest and your active recovery day, both of which are very necessary. So
for sure. So now we kind of have one last piece here. So Jameson actually met Marcus Philly back at the CrossFit Games. Was it last year?
Yeah.
And they've kind of kept in touch. And so Jameson reached out to Marcus Philly. If you don't know who Marcus Philly is, Jameson can kind of give us just a brief description.
Yeah, you guys should look him up for sure. If you are not, if you're kind of listening to this podcast and training elsewhere, you don't train here with us, then I would absolutely suggest following his kind of methods and his structures. He has his company is called Revival Strength, and they have a program called Functional Bodybuilding, but they also do remote coaching and stuff like that for individual athletes, and it's super, super good stuff. Marcus was a CrossFit Games athlete, and I guess he would say he's a retired Games athlete at this point, but has kind of transitioned into that mentality of GPP, general physical preparedness, while like not apologizing about the fact that he doesn't compete anymore. And so how do you do the CrossFit method long term? How do you look good and move well? That's his big thing for the long haul. And so he's got tons of methods. It's very informative. It's very like backed by actual good information and good science. It's not just some like fad or whatever. So it still is CrossFit in the terms that it's high intensity, constantly varied functional movements. But he provides a really helpful spin. And a really helpful approach for a lot of people. So he's got a huge following. You can look him up. It's Marcus Philly. Look him up on Instagram, and it's great training methods. And so I reached out to him and just asked him, what are your do's and don'ts of training? So we've got those here. So like we've got 3 things that Philly would say, avoid this in your training, and then 3 things that Philly would say, involve this in your training. Yeah. So, yeah.
It's cool. We're going to kind of go through the list here.
Yeah.
So the first one is...
I love lists.
Maxing out your... You do love lists. Maxing out your lifting more than once a week.
Yeah.
Why?
One, maybe not the most primary reason. I think it's horrible for you mentally. If you start getting into that, your 1 rep maxes in your training, you are in such a mentally taxing place. And to be honest, you're possibly, and not even possibly, you are probably going to fail the reps. If you try to approach that 100% threshold and you're like, I think I'm going to hit a new personal record today, or, if your 1 rep max on a clean, on a power clean is, let's get more simple. If your 1 rep max on a bench press is 225 pounds and you're getting to 220 pounds every single time and you're trying to hit that for reps and you're failing on that every single time, that gets in your head. And you get really frustrated, and it is really, really, really hard to see progress. It's hard to see that you are progressing in that way. And so that 75 to 85% range is where you build strength. So hit your right volume and your right intensity in those percentages, and stop beating yourself up in the gym every day. And so, you are literally beating your body up by putting it under more than it can handle. Yeah. By staying in that 75 to 85% range, it is what your body can handle while also getting stronger. So I think that's the reason for that.
Yeah, you'll grow for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
So focusing on the clock every single day. Now, this is a little bit different.
Yeah.
Because we do have a clock.
Yeah.
And we say, okay, we're doing this for time.
Mm-hmm.
And go.
Mm-hmm.
3, 2, 1, go.
Yeah, I think that it's part of it is those practice days. So don't turn the clock off, and don't focus on that as the need. Focus on, I think what Marcus Philly calls it a lot, and what we've kind of implemented calling it is, hey, this workout today is for quality, not for time. And so sometimes our metabolic conditioning that day is an untimed, unscored workout where we're moving for quality today, and we're not moving for time. And so it's things that you would have a really hard time like identifying as, what's my score? Well, your score is good movement.
How do you
today.
Feel?
Right.
That's when it comes into that, like,
right.
You go to the doctor and they have that chart.
Yeah.
It's got the faces.
Yeah.
How do you feel on this chart? Like, do you feel like you were at a 4? Do you feel like you're at a 1? Like,
There's those days that you don't assign percentages and you just say, hey, today we're going to squat and we're going to build to a moderate set of 2. For me, what feels moderate some days may feel really heavy other days. So that day, maintaining that moderate mentality is important, because that's what's programmed for the day, is I'm going to attack this with a moderate intensity. And so, there are days that a 315-pound back squat feels moderate. It's like, this feels good today. And there are days, some mornings at 6:30 when I come in to work out, that feels like I've never lifted it before, ever. And so, it's like, okay, so that's not moderate anymore today. And so things change. Your life is fluid, and it has fluid factors involved. And so I think that is a good way to look at, turn the clock off or turn the score. Turn the score off today. And let's go based on good movement and feel.
Okay, last one. Only using barbells for loading.
Yeah.
Don't do this.
Right.
Why?
I think that, one, there is an element of unilateral training and muscular imbalance that you end up addressing really well when you implement dumbbells and kettlebells. And I've started realizing that for myself in Marcus Philly's FBB, his functional bodybuilding program. It's tons of unilaterally loaded work while you're doing a more compound or dynamic movement on the other side. So you're unilaterally loaded on the right while you're pressing on the left. And so it's causing you to essentially learn how to create stability, where in a barbell movement you can be a little bit more sloppy at that point.
On one side of the body.
Yeah, for sure.
Hashtag Philly press.
Yeah, Philly press. That's like his trademark
thing.
Have
ever heard of
it. And so it's such a good movement, that one by itself. But I think that speaks to the fact that it from a CrossFit methodology, it makes it constantly varied. CrossFit started putting dumbbells into the open a couple of years ago, and it's changed it's changed the game for a lot of things. And then our favorite new movement doesn't involve a barbell at all, the devil's press. And so it's like it just changes the variety of things. And so it keeps you kind of faithful to that constantly varied method, while at the same time it trains some imbalances and some weaknesses that are kind of hard to train with a barbell. So
doing a 100-pound front squat is exactly the same as 250-pound dumbbell.
It's not at all. Yeah, not at all. Yeah, so, definitely.
3 things to involve in training.
Yeah.
Dedicating time to prehab, prep, and warm up.
I don't think you have to say anything else. It's just.
It's like, hey, get your body right.
Yeah.
And let's do this.
Yeah, there's a thing right now going around that's like warm up is the new mobility. And so prepping your body is just as useful as stretching your body, and if not more useful.
Well,
honestly,
some people can't even stretch while they're cold.
Yeah.
Right. I'm like that. I cannot stretch nearly as good as I can.
Right.
Maybe after I've hit it hard,
mm-hmm.
and then got my heart rate up, got my body right, and I can stretch, and then let's go.
Yeah, it's just, first of all, your performance is going to be so much more poor if you don't prep well. Like, if you are not well prepped for the workout of the day, your performance isn't going to be as solid. And so, like, you're doing heavy squat cleans that day and you haven't stretched and established good, like, warm-up and movement prep in your front rack mobility, like, you're going to have a rough day, And so that's what that's the warm-up portion. And then it's also getting your mind in that state. So, like, we like to call them primers, movement primers. And so, like, hey, before we start, we're going to do 3 reps of each of the things we're doing in the workout, or whatever. Or, like, I like to take plenty of time to build to my starting weight in a workout. And so, because we stay under pretty heavy loads for the most part. And so that 85% for me, though that 85% for me is a lot lighter than 85% for a lot of guys, that 85% for me is taxing on my body whenever I'm in that range. And I can't just jump straight into like a 255-pound clean.
I was going to say, you're going
so,
from 135,
right.
225, okay, now 255.
But that's what you see. Like, that's what you see. You see guys come in, they do their empty barbell workout. They don't want to change plates twice, so instead of putting 95 pounds on the bar, they go straight to 135, and then they're like, all right, good, let's go. And, like, that's a jump you don't make. I feel for the guys who can, like, back squat 800 pounds. I don't know how you build up to that working weight, but I can't jump into 85% and move with any sort of good integrity at that point. And so movement prep and warming up, I think, is so important because, I guess the last thing I'll say about this, it's all about, I think, muscular activation. It's learning how to activate the muscles that you need to use in those movements. And so it's not just coming in and static stretching. It's coming in and going, what muscles need to be turned on right now? Like, how do I need to learn to activate what I'm going to use in these dynamic movements?
And it's so good when you see somebody's lat bulb turn on.
Yeah.
You're like, okay, activate your lats.
Yeah.
And they're like,
yeah.
And they finally get on the pull-up rig, and then they're like, okay, we're going to do some lat activation. Then you go like, do you feel that? And it, like, light bulb goes off. They're like, oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do feel me activating my lats.
Right.
Like, okay, that's what you want to use when you're doing pull-ups.
For sure.
So,
yep.
Spend time cooling down. So warming up. Now we're talking about cooling down.
Yeah, I think cooling down is just it's a little bit more intentional than turning the song Bodies on at the end of a workout and just like saying let the bodies hit the floor and then everyone dies whenever the clock hits 0. It's just a more intentional way to let your heart rate come down from that point. And so it is a physical thing, it's a metabolic thing, but then it's also a mental thing. That's what Philly says here. He said take time to turn your brain from on to off. And so don't leave in that training mentality.
So when you're driving a car, you're driving it, you turn the car off.
Yeah.
So you turn the car off.
On the highway?
On the highway.
Yeah.
If you actually look, it will not let you pull out your keys.
Really?
You have to put the car.
I mean, it makes sense, but
makes sense. But you have to put the car in park.
Oh yeah.
You have to put the car in park.
Yeah.
To pull the keys out, though. But it's just like training, right?
Sure.
You have to go from drive to neutral.
Yeah.
To reverse.
Yeah,
to
it's
park.
really
And
good.
so you're really going to have to go through those levels to pull your keys out and eventually shut it down.
Yeah. And probably, if you have hit a really intense workout, the best thing to do is to give it a couple minutes before you try having a conversation with somebody. I find I am most irritable right at the end of a workout. And so it's a really good way to just kind of protect that environment as well.
And so the last one is tempo work. This is something that we do a lot of.
Yeah.
I feel like tempo work is great. I love tempo work.
Yeah.
So it's just going down or going up or doing movements at a certain time.
Tempo work is just another way to be extremely, extremely mindful about your movement process. So, one, it for the most part, I think it helps you realize that you're actually a lot stronger than you think you are, because when you become mindful about movement, you actually move better and you can move more. But you absolutely don't want to be moving your 95% back squat with a 10-second tempo. If you can do that, that's not a true 95%. But the reality being that it causes you to be so much more intentional and so much more mindful about your movement. So your movement patterns improve so much more. And also that time under tension is where you get so much strength gain from that. Also, it turns weightlifting into something extremely developmental, even for your like aerobic capacity, because you go, I think a couple weeks ago we did a set of 10 tempo squats with a 4-second negative and a 4-second ascent. That turns a set of back squats into a minute of constant squatting. That's rough, right?
You're
and
not
so
doing the same way.
no, not at all. So, but you had to be really mindful about that. But also, it's where you find a lot of a mental grit to be able to do that. But it's just where you find a lot of strength improvement as well. And so that tempo training is so useful, especially for a poor mover. It's great for everybody, but for a poor mover who comes into our classes and we say, hey, I want you to control your descent here. Don't just drop. So like if somebody's new to squatting, we're going to put them on box squats first, and they just drop straight down to the box. Hey, I want you to control your descent. So give me a 3-second negative on that squat. And it's just good for new movers. It's good for poor movers. So
it's even good for everybody.
Yeah, it is for sure. So
well, we want to thank you all for coming out today, listening to our podcast. We want to thank Boxstar Apparel, our sponsor.
They made your shirt.
They made my shirt, my shorts.
They made your shorts.
I wish I could say my underwear, but no.
That'd be weird.
That would be weird. But we want to thank them. You can use our code FORWARD for buy one, get one 50% off. They got some awesome stuff.
Yeah, they actually just I updated all of their kind of like their website and their inventory too. So fresh look and some fresh stuff. So cool.
Sweet.